Hi, welcome back to the Style Sessions. This is our session number 8, dealing with Weissbiers. I'm Roger Mittag, I'm the founder of Prud'homme Beer Certification, and thank you for joining me once again. This is a fascinating beer style because of its history, not because of its complexity. It's not a very complex beer, it's a very easy drinking, refreshing beer, but we're going to get to all the taste profiles first, and then we'll give you a bit of history. So the beer we're featuring today is called Weihenstephaner Weissbier. So with wheat beers, typically in Germany and in Belgium, they are re-fermented, which means that we add yeast back into the bottle, which removes any excess oxygen, creates a touch of CO2 and a little bit of alcohol content, but really that yeast, what it does is it preserves the beer for a longer period of time. So you have some great shelf life. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this beautiful Weissbier glass and we're going to start pouring into it. And you got to be gentle at first. So you just have to go in because the excess CO2 in a very narrow base can explode and you end up getting way more carbon dioxide than you want. So we're going to pour it to about 2/3, 3/4. And then we're going to swirl the bottle to bring up the yeast from the floor of the bottle itself and to add it in. It's a two-step pour that we do typically with re-fermented beers or Weissbiers as a whole. And we can go a little bit proud of the rim, so you get this beautiful cone on the top. Looks like an ice cream cone. It's pillowy, it's billowing. The color of this beer is orange, dark golden, amber, almost peach and apricot when you look at it. It's a stunning beer. It's got lots of CO2, so it's going to be a little bit sparkling, very nice and effervescent. The key with German Weissbiers, or Hefeweizens, which is how they're also called, is that the key aromatics that you should be expecting out of this style are basically relatively simple. We're looking for bananas and cloves. You are going to get some bread. You might get some sourdough bread, some fresh dough that you put right into the oven. But primarily we're getting a little bit of fruit and a little bit of spice. Now, the aromatics of banana and cloves are coming from the yeast, not from anything that we've added to the beer. German Weissbiers are 100% malt. They are typically bare minimum 50% wheat malt. The rest of it can be barley malt. So there are some stipulations when you're making a German Weissbier, and it does adhere to the German Purity Act or the Reinheitsgebot. This is a great example. I'll tell you a little bit more about this beer or the brewery in a second, but great example of what I consider to be a true German Weissbier or Hefeweizen. And it's well balanced. It's not either too much banana or too much clove. It's right sort of in the middle. When you take a sip, it's got a really, really quick finish. It's got a very, very light, lingering banana clove aftertaste, almost like a juicy fruit. It's really thirst quenching, really easy to drink, and is meant to be served cold. So around 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. This is the perfect glass for this. I'm not a fan of drinking this style out of a bottle or a can. I think it needs to be in the glass because it really opens up the characteristics. The flavor profile is very similar to the aromatics. You're going to get lots of banana, lots of clove, a little bit of fresh bread, and that's about it. So I'll give you a bit of information on the brewery first. So this is the oldest active brewery in the world. It dates back to 1040. And it was a monastery back in those days. And the Weihenstephan Monastery goes back hundreds of years before that. There is record that it started brewing as a brewery at 1040, but there's also record of hops being shipped to the Weihenstephan Monastery in 700 AD. We don't know what for, but it's a cool history. This is a very, very interesting brewery. It's in Freising, Germany, which is in Bavaria. It's not very far from Munich, maybe about 20 kilometers. Just a fantastic place to go and visit. It's got a great beer garden overlooking the valleys. But really fascinating style. So let me take you back a little bit so that you can understand how this style was created. So if you know a little bit about beer, you know that in 1516 a law was enacted in Bavaria. It was enacted by Duke Wilhelm IV, and it ended up being called the Reinheitsgebot. And the Reinheitsgebot forced German brewers to only use barley malt, hops, and water. Wheat malt, or wheat, was seen to be a better grain for making bread and therefore foodstuffs for the people of Bavaria. That's the way it was positioned. What we also knew was that the king was very, very fond of wheat beers. Now the problem is when you pass a law that's saying you can't make beer with wheat in it, you have a little bit of a problem if that's what you really like. But it's also good to be king because the king then gave royal proxy to one family called the Degenbergs to actually brew for the royal court. The other interesting fact is all the wheat fields in Bavaria were owned by the king. So we had free and easy access to wheat. So we know that wheat beers were a style. We had never heard of them before 1520. So 4 years after wheat beers were taken out of the marketplace for the general public, they actually became a style. They became known as Hefeweizens. Hefe means yeast, Weizen means wheat. And in the north part of Germany, again, it's pronounced perfectly like that. Hefeweizen. So a Z in German is like a TZ sound. But the further south you go, the more the name got switched and became a little bit more slang. Now, in German, Weiss means white. As we've discussed in previous sessions with Belgian wit beers, wit means white as well. And in Belgian wit beers, that's very reflective of that style. It's very pale in comparison to a German Weissbier. German Weissbiers are orange and amber and dark golden in color. So where does the term Weiss come from? Some people refer to it as the big frothy white foam that's on top of this beer. But being of German descent, I know that as you go from the north to the south, things change. And it's very likely that at some point what happened was, instead of calling this beer a Hefeweizen, it became known as a Weizen beer. And then as you move further into Bavaria, the TZ sound became a softer sound, and then it became a Weissbier. So in Bavaria, Weissbiers are what you would call it. If you were anywhere else in Germany, you may want to call it a Hefeweizen. So Weissbiers and Hefeweizens are the same thing. They're just located in different places. This is the most popular style of beer in Munich and in Bavaria. That's what most people drink. It's extremely refreshing. It's very thirst quenching. It's exactly what they want, so they drink a lot of it. It's a very, very unique style, and it's really easy to drink. We've seen a lot of craft brewers start to make some of these styles. The interesting part for me is most craft brewers do not go through re-fermentation because most craft brewers are putting them into cans. Re-fermentation and cans don't necessarily work well together because it builds up carbon dioxide, which could cause the can to rupture. So we typically see re-fermentation either done in the brewery or in a bottle, but not in a can. So what I would urge you to do is go out and check different beers out. I will tell you that if you have a Hefeweizen or a Weissbier out of a bottle, it's going to be a lot more carbonated than it is out of the can. So that's one thing to look for. So I wish you the best. Please join us for our next session, which is going to be on Munich Dunkels. And wish you all the best as you explore the world of beer. And please, if you want to learn more about beer, go to our website, tfkbeer.com, and check out Prud'homme Beer Certification. It's a great path on learning just a touch more about beer. Cheers. Prost. Oh, man, that's so good.